you ever catch yourself watching something, reading something, and seeing the person that you know they're supposed to be the bad guy, or you know they're supposed to be the person who's screwing up or fatally flawed, but yet you look at them and say, that individual is so much more relatable than the good guy? A lot of times when I read the Bible, I feel like I'm doing exactly that. I'll sit here and I'll look at individuals and say, I know they're doing a wrong thing, but that's exactly what I feel like I would be doing in that situation. I feel like these guys maybe kind of got a bad rap. When I read the story of Doubting Thomas, it's the story that you guys can read in your groups. That's in John 20, verses 19 through 29. What we end up seeing is this individual who really does a very relatable, understanding thing, yet he gets labeled for all of eternity as Doubting Thomas. But when you put yourself in his shoes, it looks a little bit different. I mean, this is a guy who followed this Savior Messiah, saw him get hauled off by the authorities, tried in a sham trial and tortured. Then he sees him get crucified. Then he sees all the disciples get scattered and hunted. And then he knows that this Messiah was placed in a tomb and placed under a Roman guard, the most secure thing you could possibly use at the time. And then he has all of his buddies come up to him and say, oh, hey, guess what? Yeah, we saw that guy the other day. I mean, I bet you would have a hard time believing it too. So, I mean, it's just kind of interesting when we end up seeing this, that so many people call him a bad guy, but in reality, he's doing what's very natural. And we're really all kind of geared that way, right? I mean, we're all geared in such a way that unless we see something or experience it, sometimes it's really hard for us to kind of go along with it. This is why we end up seeing so many conspiracy theories pop up all the time. There was something I was reading and don't judge me here, but it was in Teen Vogue. My excuse is I was Googling things and it just kind of popped up and whatever. I ended up on Teen Vogue. So I was reading this article and they were talking about this individual that was a researcher whose name was Cynthia Miller Idris. And this research was basically saying that whenever something that's dramatic happens, we tend to cling on to anything that's more relatable or anything that might be more believable rather than what is obviously the truth, just because that's how our minds work. Well, I feel like as Christians we end up doing this exact same thing, and when we do it, we end up seeing that maybe, we're not as strong-willed as we think we are. Maybe our faiths aren't as strong as they are, and sometimes if we're not careful, it can start leading us down a path of maybe even worrying, saying, do I really believe everything that I say I believe? If you feel like you're in that boat of being somebody who does have a hard time kind of going along with things unless you can physically see it or touch it or interact with it, you're in good company, because the individuals who followed Christ did the exact same thing. So often they had a hard time actually, understanding or following or believing the things that Christ was saying. We see this in the second sign that we run into in the Gospel of John. If you recall, in the Gospel of John, John's going to go through these 7 different signs that explain to us the divine nature of who Christ is. It started out with the changing of water to wine that Pastor Doug was going over. And the second sign is this instance where Christ heals the son of this official. Now, read in the first few verses here. So this is John chapter 4, verses 46 through 49. You can read on to 50, where he has this interaction with this individual who says, why don't you just come over to where I am and physically be here with my son? I know that you'll heal him. And Christ says, you guys, you always want me to come here and physically do things. You can't believe without seeing. But even after getting called out, the official says, okay, got it. Why don't you just come on down? And you can just see here, you could almost like feel, as you're reading this, Christ just kind of going, you guys just can't believe without seeing and interacting with things. We see this time and time and time again in the Bible. And I think what comes out of this is we end up seeing that basically we are weak. Our flesh is weak. And oftentimes, if we end up living in this flesh and believing in nothing more than the flesh, then our belief itself can also become very weak. Here's where we get to the good part. God knows us so well, and He knows our flaws. He knows our weaknesses. He knows that we have this problem actually being obedient and listening and following his ways unless we can physically interact with things. And so what we see Christ do in verse 50 is he actually goes through with it. He heals this individual's son. And what you see is this interesting transformation in the official. First, he says that he believes him. And then he sticks around for a while. Then he gets confirmation that Christ really is who he says he is, that his son has actually been healed exactly as Christ said. And then we end up seeing, because he recognizes the goodness and the blessings of God, the fact that his faith, this belief that was, almost certainly a baby infant belief, at first, it grows, it becomes more mature, and everybody around him is blessed by the fact that this thing has happened and everybody was there to see it. In our own lives, so often we end up struggling with the exact same thing. We feel we're in a deep, dark place where our faith is so incredibly weak. And so often the solution is simply opening up our eyes, listening as the official did for Christ to do his work. And it may mean running on just a little tiny amount of faith for right now. But when we open our eyes, when we open our ears, we start becoming more observant to the way God is working in the people and in the activities and the actions around us, that just dumps fuel on the fire of our faith, and it helps us to become stronger and stronger and stronger believers in who Jesus Christ truly is, even when the signs may not exactly be there. Faith is hard. It's always going to be hard. For individuals where it may seem like it's easy, rest assured those individuals also have little moments. Now, the good news is that just as we saw with the official, the more and more and more we see the goodness of Jesus Christ working in our lives and working in the lives of people around us, the stronger and stronger and stronger our faith becomes. Why? Because now it's kind of like we can see it. It's kind of like we can touch it. We can experience it and be in it. And because of that, it almost hits a point where you start saying, how can I not believe in this? How can I not believe in all of the blessings that I have physically experienced Christ do in my life, that I've seen my loved ones go through, that I've seen other people experience in their lives? We all would love for there to be some giant billboard in the sky that says, I'm Jesus and I'm here. But that's not how God reveals himself to us. You see, just as with the official, oftentimes it requires that we have open minds, open eyes, and open hearts, that we be looking for those blessings. But when we look for them, they become so apparent to us. And when we see those things, it becomes something that we're able to carry throughout the rest of our lives, so that way, when we don't see things, when it seems like it's dark again, and when it seems like our faith, once again, cannot get any lower, we can power through and know and be rest assured that we serve a great and mighty and powerful God, both when we can see him and when we can do little more than just feel him in our hearts. Thank you for coming again, and until we meet again, God bless and stay safe.